If you recall, I'm trying to do a cosmetic engine and engine compartment restoration. I want this thing to look pretty, okay? But at the same time, I'm going to be doing some maintenance that I know needs to be done on this engine. We'll be going over that in future episodes. So we're going to keep working on this car, but I wanted to give you a brief update for what I've been doing this past week. I had to bring out the paintbrushes. I had to do the old artist trick. Now, I've done this on a lot of cars, starting back to the first car I bought when I was 13 years old. I got out there and started painting it because it didn't look very pretty, particularly the rust holes in my old 34 Ford, okay? But I mentioned that not all satin blacks are created equal, and that's really the color that I want to use in and around the engine compartment. I want not a gloss black. Gloss black shows too many flaws and it just kind of jumps out at you. Once again, I mentioned a couple episodes ago that we're going to attack each thing that the eye goes to. And if we fix those items, then you're going to fool yourself and thinking, wow, that looks like a new engine. And it really won't. But if I do enough detail and I change enough of the flaws so that they're disguised, then when you look at the engine, the overall image is going to make you feel good inside, okay? I mean, maybe most of us, all right? But I wanted a satin black for the parts like the radiator, the brake booster, the reservoir for the power steering fluid. This is pretty much kind of the factory sheen that I wanted to try to get out of this. And then the other thing on the engine, I wanted more of a semi-gloss black, almost flat. So I experimented with a lot of different colors, a lot of different types of paints. You can see some of these are way too flat, some of these are way too shiny. And I finally settled on one. It was actually a mix. I had to take some engine paint, both semi-gloss and flat, kind of mix them together to get kind of the sheen I wanted on the engine block itself. As far as brushes, I've pretty much found that the smaller brushes work better. You're working on so many different tight areas, so many different varying surfaces. To try to go in there with bigger brushes when you're painting and detailing an engine block, you're going to have problems because you're going to get paint on stuff that you don't want paint on. But when you do go after your brushes, you want quality brushes that are real thick. You want real thick brushes with a lot of bristle that will hold a lot of paint. So when you go in there and dab those spots, you'll be able to get enough paint on and you'll be able to get it to flow out. Okay, let's go over to the engine and I'm going to show you how it looks now. We're far from being finished, but at least you're going to see what I did as far as painting the engine block and how it looks now compared to how it looked a few weeks ago. You'll have to admit that at least the engine block looks a lot better. You can see the areas I painted all up around the head here by the fuel injectors and all down the side as far as I could reach, and then around here and then on the front of the engine block there. I used a very small brush when working around these fuel injectors and the bolt heads because you got a lot of fine detail trying to not get paint all over these sensors and other various hoses and wires running through this area. So small brushes work very well here. Let me show you the front of the engine block. This really looks nice. Now, granted, it's not show quality, but when I get this all together and you look down in here, it's going to look really nice. Now, you notice I had to do some masking here. There are some aluminum parts that you may not want to get paint on, and particularly the vacuum pump housing was a lot easier to mask off. And then using a small brush, I was able to work into all these areas. Once again, about the only place I could use a 1-inch or wider brush would be right in this area. So I pretty much found the smaller brushes work well when you're painting these engine blocks like this. I know some of you might be thinking, well, Kent, it's not perfect. Come on, there's a few spots you missed. Well, I don't want to spend that much time, okay? Now, you're going to have to decide this on your own. There's no extent to the amount of detail that you can do on an engine and in an old engine compartment like this. Once again, my goal is to get to about 85% of perfection because I found that perfection is usually an enemy of time, all right? So I've got the engine block painted. It's looking pretty good in here. I've still got some accessories that I have to paint, but now I'm going to pull the valve cover and I'm going to go after the aluminum, cleaning and sealing the aluminum. So when we come back next week, you're going to see a huge change in the engine compartment as I bring the camera in close after we've done the aluminum and some of the surrounding accessories. While I have the valve cover off, I'm going to do a valve adjustment, and I'm also going to check timing chain stretch. Now, I may show this in a different video, but at least I'll be able to tell you next week, hey, how does this chain look and how does the engine timing look internally?